I'm talking with Andrew Cooper from LibertyWorks, and we're talking about what LibertyWorks does, and in particular, it advocates a libertarian posture or philosophy for government.
I think philosophy is the right word. A classical liberal might be another term that people are familiar with. I think people have a...
Why don't you define it for me?
Well, libertarians typically believe that people should be able to lead their lives in whichever way they feel makes them happy or they desire, provided that they always extend that same right to everyone else.
Yep.
So that means that we can't go around imposing our will on others. We should expect that they wouldn't impose their will on us. We'll extend the same right, and effectively just we should leave each other alone. We shouldn't cast judgment.
There are some paradoxes in that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get accused of imposing my will on other people all the time because I'm a Christian. But last time I checked, that's the way democracy works. It's 51% gets to impose what they think on 49%.
Yeah.
So I don't know that that's properly called an imposition. But, does a libertarian believe in speed limits?
A libertarian believes in certain restrictions, because if you have potential, if you're acting in a manner that has the potential to hurt someone else, then that breaks a fundamental tenet of libertarianism.
Yep.
So most people have natural rights. They have their right.
I like that word.
Yeah, it's their right to keep their property, or the earnings of their life, if you like. They have the right to maintain their life, and they have their right to maintain their freedom.
Yep.
So as long as we all extend each other and acknowledge that everyone has that right, then we believe society operates in a far more harmonious way.
Yep.
And there's less force and coercion in the system, so people tend to be happier. So you mentioned about democracy. One of the big dangers, and we believe in democracy, but one of the big dangers in democracy is that you get to a stage where groups in society start to exert influence over government and use government as a tool to coerce others to do what they want. So take taxation, for example. Corporatism, yeah, absolutely. So big companies can cozy up to decision makers in government and get either favourable regulations or perhaps even some corporate welfare if you happen to be a car manufacturer or...
So democracy starts becoming a tool wielded against the majority.
Yeah. Democracy can be corrupted, and we all know that's a fact.
Yeah.
So as libertarians or classical liberals, we're very mindful of that. And we think that the reason it happens is people lose sight of the fact that what we're really here for is to just protect each other's natural rights. There may be, we discussed it in the previous section, but there may be well-meaning reasons why governments or certain sectors of society think we should go and use taxpayers' money to solve certain societal problems.
Yep.
But the trouble is, if you're going to use taxpayers' money, how do you get that money?
Yeah.
At the end of the day...
Well, you said earlier that we have the right to keep our earnings.
That's right.
And I love that idea. It sounds like a 0% tax rate.
Yeah, well, so libertarians also believe that in order to maintain law and order, to protect your natural rights, most libertarians believe that a certain percentage of taxation can be justified because it directly relates to law and order. So, so the safety and security of the individuals within whatever country or area we're talking about, and also maintaining a legal system, and with essentially common law rights and laws.
Well, for example, a national defence force is something that nobody could achieve individually or through private enterprise. The free market cannot achieve national defence.
I'd say most of us would believe that, but there are other ways that defence can be maintained. For example, America bring in private contractors on occasions, so it could be another way to solve a say an invasion situation would be that we'll all be wealthier under a libertarian or libertarian utopia.
Yep.
We'd all be in much better position to contribute to buying an army or some sort of force in order to defend ourselves. But your point's well taken. At the end of the day, most
there would be some
libertarians...
inefficiencies to doing it after the fact of invasion,
Of course.
as opposed to...
Look, mercenaries, lots of armies have, used mercenaries, and sometimes they're not the most effective. I was just making the point that sometimes there are different ways to, skin a cat, so to speak.
Yeah.
But most believe that's right, that there's a little bit of taxation can be justified within the system as long as it's there to protect people.
Yeah.
Essentially from others or from each other.
Yeah.
Outsiders or each other.
Now, I'm actually of the opinion that a significantly low taxation rate actually creates more revenue for the government, because it doesn't remove as much of the incentive for productivity.
Yep.
And therefore there's an increase in productivity which is still taxed, and therefore a smaller percentage of a bigger pie leads to more pie for the government.
Yeah, and there's been examples. I mean, the famous Reagan tax cuts when he first came into power in America are an example of that. They had a budget problem. He reduced taxes, reduced tax rates. So the implication being that it looked like that there'd be a reduction in the tax take, the budget deficit would get greater, but what actually happened was the tax cuts gave money back to the people went out into the marketplace and bought goods and services that were wanted, not necessarily given to them by government, but wanted.
Yep.
That stimulated the market, the economy became buoyant, and the tax take rose overall.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of examples like that. But tax is a funny thing. Like the ethics of taxation, I think, aren't very well understood. Now, in free markets with limited taxation, you and I, the only way I make money is not by getting a government handout, by engaging. Either I exchange my services for you and you employ me, and if I do a good job, you'll pay me a fair reward for that.
Yep.
If I don't like the rate that you're paying me, I'll go and get a job somewhere else. If that person over there thinks that I'm doing a better job and I'm underappreciated, they may offer me a job. Yep. But at the end of the day, you and I, we engage in an exchange of goods and services, or I buy products with the money that I get from you, and I go to the shops and I buy a product. If I don't like the product, I switch my buying behaviour and I go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But it's all voluntary.
Yes.
And this is the key. I don't do anything that I don't want to do. Once economies become government heavy, there's lots of coercion in the system. We're all doing things that we don't necessarily want to do. Yep. We might stomach it, because in Australia, let's face it, we live in a fantastic place.
Yep.
So we stomach it, but it annoys us.
So what do you
it's
think
unnecessary.
about the new policy in Queensland of Buy Queensland, where local suppliers will be given up to a 30% weighting advantage over out of region, out of state, out of country suppliers?
Yeah, so you periodically see this, these sort of policies. I believe that there's two reasons why the policies has been introduced. The overriding reason is that the unions want it, and the current state government have implemented it because the unions want it. Mm-hmm. The unions want particularly construction projects to be channeled through their favourite, Queensland companies. Mm-hmm. And the nebulous nature of those regulations mean that government bureaucrats have an ability to direct projects to where they want them. Yeah. It's not anymore on the basis of price. Yeah. And I guess the second reason is, and I've just lost my train of thought there, but the second reason is just it appeals to that provincial mentality. But what it really does is just increases costs unnecessarily. Yeah. And it directs, and it directs funds to areas that are less efficient. Yeah. And that ultimately becomes a problem. Now,
so by giving a 30% advantage to one supplier, you reduce that supplier's incentive to be efficient, productive, and affordable. Yeah.
If they know that they've got a 30% advantage on the competition, they won't win the tender by 30% price difference. Yeah. They'll win the tender on essentially the same price. Yeah. But 30% extra has been loaded into the contract value. Yeah. And that's just the nature of government. I mean, government's a funny thing. I mean, if you subscribe to the belief that every time you regulate, you take away somebody's freedom, you've got to expect that the people whose freedom have been taken away are going to be a little annoyed about it. Yeah. And so what you'll find is that in construction projects, people that don't have the ability to tender on these projects, they'll just withdraw. They'll be so annoyed about it, they'll just go, what's the point? And the market will just be left to just Queensland construction companies bidding against each other at incredibly inflated values.
Yeah.
Otherwise, anything else is irrational, really. Yep.
When we come back, we're going to talk with Andrew about the Marriage Act. Is he going to vote yes? Is he going to vote no? Or is there a third option, nothing at all? Thanks for watching. If you really enjoyed that video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Have a look at this great video next and check out the website for even more interesting articles and episodes later.